People without children do not really need money for themselves anyway. That is what my sister Julia announced to 300 guests at her luxury baby shower. She pointed the microphone right at me, smiling like a saint. Helping me is probably the only legacy she will ever have. Let us give her a pity clap, everyone. The room chuckled. My mother nodded in agreement from the front row. I stood there in my old dress, holding a glass of tap water because I could not afford the cash bar. I did not cry. I did not run. I just looked down at my phone. It was 1:58 in the afternoon. I took a slow sip of water. 2 minutes. In exactly 2 minutes, the ownership of this party changes hands. And Julia has no idea she is standing in a cage she built herself. Before I tell you what happens when the clock strikes 2, let me know in the comments where you are watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. 3 weeks ago, my life looked very different. I was sitting on the floor of my studio apartment, eating instant noodles because I was too disciplined to order takeout. I had a spreadsheet open on my laptop. It was my freedom fund. For 5 years, I had saved every bonus, every overtime shift, and every tax refund. The number at the bottom of the screen was beautiful. $22,000. It was enough for a down payment on a small condo. It was my ticket out of the rental trap. Then my phone rang. It was 11:42 at night. When I saw my sister Julia's name, my stomach dropped. We only talked when she needed something, but this time she was not asking. She was screaming, "Gabby, please, you have to help me. The baby. Oh God. The baby." She was hysterical. Between sobs, she told me the doctors had found a fetal heart defect. Hypoplastic left heart syndrome. She said they needed to perform an emergency in utero surgery immediately, or my niece would not survive the night. This is where the weaponized empathy comes in. I want you to understand something. I am an operations manager. I look for risks for a living. I am not easily fooled, but Julia knew exactly how to bypass my logic. She did not just call me. She FaceTimed me. She was sitting in what looked like a hospital waiting room, with beige walls and fluorescent lights. Her eyes were red. She held up a tablet to the camera, showing me a complex ultrasound with timestamps from 20 minutes ago. It looked terrifyingly real. "They will not operate without the deposit," she sobbed. "Insurance needs pre-authorization, but we do not have time. The specialist demands $22,000 upfront. Gabby, please, I do not have it. Mom does not have it. You are the only one." She was not asking for money for herself. She was asking for the life of an innocent child. She knew I could say no to her, but I could never say no to a dying baby. It was the perfect emotional heist. I did not hesitate. I logged into my bank account. My fingers were shaking as I typed in the routing number she gave me. I watched the balance of my freedom fund drop to 0. I clicked send. "Thank you," she whispered, wiping her eyes. "You just saved her life." The screen went black. I sat there in the silence of my apartment, staring at my cold noodles. I felt a heavy, crushing weight in my chest, but I also felt proud. I told myself that money is just paper, but family is forever. I went to sleep that night believing I was a hero. I had no idea that the hospital waiting room was actually the lobby of a 24-hour spa, and the specialist fee was actually the deposit for the ice sculptures standing in front of me right now. 2 days later, I was still holding my breath. I had not slept more than an hour at a time. I kept checking my phone, waiting for an update. Was the surgery successful? Was the baby okay? Every time the screen stayed dark, my anxiety spiked. I sent texts, but they went unanswered. I told myself Julia was just recovering, that hospitals were busy places, that no news was good news. I was lying on my couch, scrolling mindlessly through Instagram to distract myself from the silence. That is when I saw it. It was not on Julia's profile. She had blocked me from viewing her stories, probably to keep up the charade. It was on the profile of a mutual friend from high school, someone Julia had forgotten to block. A little circle highlighted in pink at the top of my feed. I tapped it. The video filled my screen. It was not a hospital room. It was a ballroom with floor-to-ceiling glass walls overlooking a manicured garden. The caption read, "Venue secured. Baby shower of the century coming soon." I turned the volume up. I heard the clinking of champagne glasses. I heard laughter. And then I heard her voice. It was unmistakable. It was the same voice that had been sobbing to me 48 hours ago about a dying baby. But now, it was bright, arrogant, and drunk on power. Look at these ice sculptures, Julia said, panning the camera over a massive, frozen swan. Can you believe we actually pulled this off? Thank God for silent sponsors who are too stupid to ask questions. The camera flipped. There she was. She was not in a hospital gown. She was wearing a white silk dress, holding a flute of sparkling cider, beaming at the camera. She looked healthy. She looked triumphant. I froze. My thumb hovered over the screen, holding the video in place. I looked at the timestamp. Posted 2 hours ago. I replayed it. Silent sponsors. Too stupid to ask questions. The math hit me like a physical blow to the gut. The specialist fee. The deposit. The urgency. It was never about a heart defect. My $22,000 was not paying for a surgeon's hands. It was paying for the glass walls, the imported flowers, and that ridiculous ice swan. The baby was never sick. I sat there for a long time. The grief that had been crushing my chest for 3 days simply evaporated. It did not fade away slowly. It vanished in an instant, replaced by something cold and heavy. It was a sensation I had never felt before. It was the death of my sister. Not the physical death I had feared, but the death of the person I thought she was. She did not just steal my money. She stole my empathy. She took the best part of me, the part that loved her unconditionally, and she monetized it for a party. I did not scream. I did not call our mother, Stacy, to cry about the betrayal. I knew exactly what Stacy would say. She would tell me I was misunderstanding, or that Julia deserved a nice party after a hard pregnancy. I was done listening to lies. I sat up. I took a deep breath. I walked over to my desk and opened my laptop. I was not a sister anymore. I was an operations manager, and I had just discovered a massive discrepancy in the ledger. It was time to conduct an audit. I did not confront her immediately. That is what an amateur would do. I needed the paper trail. I needed to know exactly how deep the rot went. First, I picked up the phone. I dialed the number on the invoice Julia had sent me, the one allegedly from the pediatric surgeon. I put on my best professional voice. Hello, I am calling to pay the post-operative bill for patient Julia Anderson, I said. I have the invoice number right here. There was a pause on the other end, followed by the clicking of a keyboard. Then, a confused voice came back. Ma'am, I think you have the wrong number. We do not have a patient by that name, and we definitely do not do fetal surgery. This is the Pure Skin Cosmetic Dermatology Center. I thanked her and hung up. Fraud confirmed. She had photoshopped an invoice from a spa to look like a hospital bill. Now I had the motive. I needed the leverage. I drove straight to the glass pavilion. It was even more intimidating in person, a towering structure of steel and glass that screamed exclusion. I walked into the management office and asked for Julian, the owner. Julian looked like a man who was used to dealing with wealthy people who thought deadlines were suggestions. He was reviewing a file on his desk, rubbing his temples. When I introduced myself as Julia's sister, he did not smile. He looked relieved, but also angry. Thank God someone showed up, he said, not bothering with pleasantries. Look, I told your sister yesterday, if the final balance is not cleared by noon, I am pulling the plug. The caterers are already threatening to walk. I kept my face neutral. The final balance? $15,000, Julian said, tapping the paper in front of him. She paid the initial deposit, but the remaining balance was due 48 hours ago. She keeps telling me the wire is coming, but I have heard that excuse 1,000 times. Technically, she is in default. The contract is void right now. I felt a cold smile spreading inside my chest. It was better than I thought. Julia had spent my $22,000 on the deposit and the ice sculptures, but she did not have the money to finish the job. She was gambling that she could charm or bully her way through the event without paying the rest, or maybe she was planning to stiff him after the fact. I looked at Julian. He was a businessman. He did not care about family drama. He cared about the bottom line. If the contract is void, I said slowly, then the date is technically open, correct? He looked at me, confused. Technically, yes. But we are 24 hours out. I cannot rebook it. You do not have to rebook it, I said. I want to book it. Right now. I will pay the full $15,000. Upfront. Julian stopped tapping his pen. He looked at me, really looked at me, assessing whether I was another time waster. You want to pay her bill? He asked. No, I corrected him. I want to sign a new contract. My name only. I want to be listed as the exclusive sponsor. That means I own the food, I own the time slot, and most importantly, I own the security instructions. I pulled out my emergency credit card. It was the card I kept for catastrophic life events. I figured destroying my sister's ego counted as a catastrophe. Julian looked at the card, then back at the voided contract on his desk. He shrugged. As long as the card clears, I do not care whose name is on the paper. He ran the card. It cleared. He printed out a fresh document. Master Service Agreement. Client, Gabby Anderson. I signed my name at the bottom. The ink was still wet when I walked out of that office. I held the folder against my chest. It felt heavier than a stack of papers. It felt like a weapon. Julia thought she was the queen of the castle, but she had just forgotten to pay the rent. And the landlord was on her way. Back in the present, the party was in full swing. It was 5 minutes past 2. The glass pavilion was doing exactly what it was designed to do: amplify everything. The laughter sounded richer, the champagne bubbles looked brighter, and the arrogance was so thick you had to wade through it. I stood near a pillar, watching my investment at work. It was a beautiful party, I had to admit. My $22,000 had bought excellent lighting. Julia was floating through the room like royalty. She had her hand resting protectively on her bump, accepting compliments from women wearing diamonds the size of grapes. These were her mother-in-law's friends, the high society crowd she was desperate to impress. Stacy, my mother, was right behind her, acting as the royal announcer. I heard her telling a woman in a Chanel suit. Oh yes, Julia planned every detail herself. She has such exquisite taste. It is just innate, you know? I took a sip of my water. Exquisite taste. Bought with stolen money. Stacy spotted me. Her smile faltered for a fraction of a second before she marched over. She did not lower her voice. Gabby, could you be useful for once? She asked, thrusting a stack of used cocktail napkins at me. The waiters are busy. Clear the table near the entrance. It looks messy in the photos. She treated me like hired help. Actually, she treated me worse. She would have tipped the help. I took the napkins. I did not argue. I just smiled. A small, tight smile that did not reach my eyes. Of course, Mom. Whatever helps the aesthetic. I walked toward the entrance, but I did not throw the napkins away. I placed them neatly on a tray and pulled out my phone. I scrolled to the contact labeled Head of Security. He was a large man named Marcus, standing by the disc jockey booth, looking bored in his black suit. He worked for the venue. Which meant, as of yesterday, he worked for me. I typed 3 words. Initiate Protocol B. I watched Marcus check his wrist. He looked up, caught my eye across the room, and gave a barely perceptible nod. Julia, meanwhile, had decided that my presence in the corner was an eyesore. She was trying to take a group photo with her in-laws, and I was apparently ruining the background. She snapped her fingers, actually snapped them at a security guard standing near the emergency exit. Excuse me, she called out, her voice sharp enough to cut through the ambient chatter. You there? Please escort my sister out. She is killing the mood, and we need this shot to be perfect. The room went quiet. People turned. It was the ultimate power move. She was not just asking me to leave. She was having me removed by force. She wanted to show her new family that she had the power to discard anyone who did not fit her picture. The guard stepped forward. Julia smirked, adjusting her pose for the camera, waiting for him to grab my arm. But the guard did not walk toward me. He walked right past me. He walked straight up to Julia, stopped 3 feet away and crossed his arms. He did not look at her. He looked past her, toward the disc jockey booth. He tapped his earpiece twice. The disc jockey cut the music. The music cut out. Laughter died. Hundreds of heads turned as the guard ignored Julia and stared at me. I stepped forward, set down my glass, and walked into the open floor while the microphone screeched. Julia tried to recover, laughing into the mic and calling it a technical issue, claiming security was removing an intruder. I kept walking. The crowd parted. Marcus, head of security, blocked her instead and handed her a clipboard. She snapped that she was the client. He corrected her. The paper was the Master Service Agreement, my name listed as exclusive sponsor, hers voided. Her face drained as she saw my signature. I leaned in and whispered that the venue, the party, even the air belonged to me, and reminded her I knew about the $22,000 fake surgery charge she'd used to impress her in-laws. She froze. Her husband stood. Her mother-in-law clutched her pearls. If she screamed, she'd have to explain everything. I gave her 60 seconds. Option 1. Fake a medical emergency and leave quietly. Option 2. I show the police report and let security arrest her in front of everyone. Her pride cracked. She gasped, clutched her stomach, and screamed about the baby. Chaos erupted. Her husband carried her out. The guests scattered. Marcus cleared the room. I stood alone in the ruined party, ice sculptures melting, orchids wilting, knowing every dollar I spent was worth the silence. My mother stormed over, furious. I handed her proof from the clinic, showing the invoice was fake. She wasn't sick. She stole the money. And you helped spend it. I walked out. The next morning, I sold Julia's debt to a collection agency. Because in our state, marital debt is shared. 3 weeks later, it wrecked her husband's credit. He investigated. Found the fraud. Filed for divorce and custody. The marriage collapsed faster than the party. The venue refunded part of my money. I used it for a down payment on my own condo. It's empty. No couch. No orchestra. Just peace. If you have ever had to look like the villain just to survive, drop a fire emoji in the comments.